The steam curtain comes up and you lose the yellow shirt for a minute. You'll be a hero real quick if you have the fold handle in the wrong position, so check that. Spread 'em, 5 potatoes, and you're all set. Okay, wipeout. The engines come up. See that they match. The safety guys jump up and make sure the beer cans are down. Tension signal. Hands you off to the shooter and then head back in 4Gs. Grab the towel rack, touch the ejection seat handle, and make sure you're not sitting on it. If you lose an engine on the cat, stroke the blowers. 12 to 14, not to exceed 16. Rad alt, you see you're descending, the wiser man will grab the handle.
You're listening to the podcast, so there I was. It's how every great aviation tale begins. This is episode 18.
Every great aviation tale.
What's the title of this one, Fig?
Best job in the galaxy.
Yeah, not the world.
The galaxy.
The galaxy, yeah.
Told by Nasty. It was such a good interview, we had to split it into 2.
He goes on to tell some more amazing stories, including the time that he jumped out of an F-14 as a rank
Which was
instructor.
a surprise because I didn't expect him to tell that story. I didn't know that he jumped out of one.
No.
That's a good story too.
It was a very good story. And let's see, what else? He talked about going to Nuke-School. Whole bunch of young ensigns and 4 old guys. Hard.
Hard. Yeah. What a class act.
Yeah.
What a class
absolutely.
act.
So much fun.
My only sad thing to say is eventually this interview ends, and I never wanted it to end because I wanted to hear more and more.
We're going to have him back. Just buckle in and listen to the rest of this. You're going to enjoy the time we spend with Nasty. Episode 18. Here it comes. Word is you did a couple other things before you left the Navy. You had XO of an aircraft carrier, CO of an oiler, or a support ship, doing unreps. Which to me, I was on board the USS Austin, doing Northern Wedding Bold Guard and watching unreps, which is underway replenishments, refueling supplies. That looks as dangerous or more dangerous to me than formation flying, albeit at 8 knots, 10 knots. How those massive ships don't smack into each other in rough seas is pretty impressive, to say the least. So you got to command one of those ships and then went on to command the Nimitz and a strike group commander aboard the Ike. So I have to ask, what was the most difficult job, being an XO or a CO? And then I'll follow on with, and I know Fig will have a bunch of questions too, but what was the coolest job or the coolest thing you got to see or do in each of those billets? And also you were commander of VF-31 too, so an F-14 squadron commander as well.
Yeah, well, a lot to unpack there. So I did earn squadron command of VF-31 Tomcatters. Flying F-14Ds, my first command, and it was awesome. I mean, I had a blast. My entire career, I just was on a cycle of operations. So I did 15 extended deployments, 6 months or greater. You know, I just happened to show up at the squadron and right, the timing was we're going to do a deployment, then a workup, then a deployment. A lot of guys would come in and they do mostly workups and maybe one deployment, but I was lucky enough. So in my VF-31 tour, my XO ride on Carl Vinson, my CO ride on Nimitz, and my strike group command, we deployed a lot. I was lucky enough to operate. And so VF-31 started out at Miramar when I was XO, and then home port changed, single-sided Tomcats to Oceana. Still flew West Coast cruises with 31 on Carl Vinson and on Abraham Lincoln. So back on those two. So I commanded that squadron, which was awesome. That's what I've been trained to do. Then I went to the Pentagon, got selected for nuclear power. Did not want to go. I won't waste your time with that story. Didn't want to go. Got kind of forced into it. And the best thing that ever happened. Nuke power school is really hard. It's really hard. And you're going through as a 42-year-old commander with, there were 4 of us, prospective executive officers in a class, and there were 50 ensigns in the same class. And you got to learn all that stuff yourself. So that you qualify to, command or be part of the leadership triad with XO, the reactor officer, and the CO for, the on our carriers. And then the next thing you do out of school, so school's about a year and a half, and then you go be the executive officer of an aircraft carrier. That is a hard job. That is a hard job. But as I'll relate the story, I was walking with a guy named Skids Pennington, who ended up, he's an admiral now, and he ended up going to Nuke-School out of VFA 14. And he said, hey, XO, so I'm thinking about this nuke thing, but man, you must get calls all hours of the night. I mean, like, you never get any sleep, all kind of stuff. And I said, yeah, I do, and I don't get any sleep. But whatever I tell them on the phone, that's what they do. Buck stops with me. First time ever in my Navy career that I controlled what happened. And that's pretty rewarding. You get to own the whole ship. And there's a real funny story. If you're the XO and you want 1,000 people from the crew to muster on the hangar bay, you just get them to call it out, muster 1,000 people on the hangar bay. If the captain of the carrier wants to muster 1,000 people in the crew, he calls the XO. So it's kind of a funny story.
Right.
Then I went directly from the XO of Carl Vinson, where I kind of learned how to drive a big ship under the captain's tutelage, and they gave me what's called a deep draft command. And that was Sacramento, this fast store ship. So in those days, the deep drafts were either one of the L ships like Austin, or a supply ship. And you really wanted a supply ship because it gave you a lot of experience in underway replenishment, which is what you just talked about.
Right.
And what happens in underway replenishment is the supply ship, he's the guide. He's the one that maintains course, and it's 13 knots through the water. That's the speed.
Okay.
And the carrier or the destroyer or the L ship comes alongside. And oftentimes we have ships on both sides. So a carrier on the port side, always on the port side, because the carrier's island is on the starboard side of the carrier. So you need to have that visibility there. And then we have something else on the starboard side of the Ike. Starboard side of Sacramento. And what you do is you shoot lines across with M1 rifles, and they take a small kind of a line across where you pull the bigger lines. You end up connecting the bigger lines in between ships, and then they pull a pad eye across for each of those lines, and then you hook it up. And so you might have 3 refueling rigs and up to 4 conrep rigs, all tensioned up across the ships with enough tension to dragging the either the fuel hoses or the supplies across without those wires sagging. And the rigs are designed to hold tension even while the ships are moving through the water, and even while they're pitching. And it looks like a big catamaran with the wires tensioning the ships.
Right.
And what was funny is even though the SAC would maintain course, like if I was going to steer a course of 180, the carrier's heft, the gross tonnage of the carrier, would drag us to the left. So even though we're pointed 180, if you look at the track, it's this big arc as the carrier dragged the two ships, kind of to the side. And then you teach people momentum control. And so the controls that you give in they're little tiny changes in RPM of the engines and little tiny course changes. And then you wait to see what happens. Collisions happen when you over control the course or the speed, and can happen when somebody gets impatient and doesn't wait for the momentum to catch up to the ship, and then gives more orders or gives countermanding orders. And that's when you get into trouble. And so it's heavily trained. And so the neat thing is I learned how to do unreps on the carrier as part of the training process. I got 175 unreps as the CEO of the Sacramento. When I showed up at Nimitz, I knew how to unrep. And so I could just sit back in my chair and I could just teach people how to unrep and how to wait. To your question about which was best, captain of a carrier, the captain of a United States Navy large deck nuclear powered aircraft carrier is the best job in the galaxy ever, hands down. I could have died right then and been just fine. You could have left me there for 10 years. I'd have been just fine. You become one with the ship, and it's awesome. It is awesome. It's the best job ever. Now, as a striker commander a couple years later, that was the most fun because I don't have to do anything. I had all these professional captains that knew what they were doing. So I just flew 2 times a day, worked out, ate what I wanted, if they called me to ask me for guidance or something, I'd tell them something, but I didn't do anything.
Nice.
As an admiral, they all did the work. And so, yeah, that was kind of how that runs. So, I commanded, I was XO at Carl Vinson for almost 2 years, then CO in the Sacramento for a year and a half, went to shore duty at Airpac as readiness, picked up Nimitz, and I was Nimitz CO for 30 months. In between all those jobs, I went back and forth to the Pentagon. And then I went from the Pentagon to sea as Strike Group Commander on Ike, did double deployment back-to-back to the Gulf. Shortney Gortney, 4-star Fleet Forces Command, said we're going to war against Iran. So, we had that tension going when I was CO Ike. They brought us back, re-skid the flight deck, sent us right back out with a cruiser, and the whole theater depressurized when President Obama put General Austin in there. And we didn't actually, do that, as you know from history. So,
Right.
But I had those 2 deployments, came back in June of 13 and went to the Pentagon for the last 4 years of my Navy career.
I noticed you didn't say the Pentagon tour was your favorite. I'm just saying. That's actually why I got out of the Marine Corps.
Weird.
5 tours in the Pentagon, none voluntary.
Right? Yeah, I got offered 3 years on the IG staff at the Pentagon, and that's when I dropped my letter and said, I think I'm going to go fly airplanes somewhere else. But I had already done 3 years on the ground. But
I'll give you a public service announcement. There are people who are really proud of not ever going to the Pentagon with long careers, and I got to tell you, we need the best operators back there, and we need really smart, fired up people that'll go. So you kind of have to go do it. The neat thing is, after 5 tours, I knew exactly how the Pentagon worked, and I could maneuver through that bureaucracy pretty well, especially in the requirements and programming world, which were my last 2 jobs were.
Nice. Okay.
I got a couple quick questions for you. Nasty.
Okay.
Number 1, how many flight hours did you retire with in the Tomcat or a total, tactical aviation, naval aviation? And number 2, did you ever have your hand on the ejection handle?
I pulled the ejection handle. So 3,750 hours total, 3,000 in Tomcats, 3,060, 500 hours in Super Hornets. And I flew Super Hornets as a hobby, as a Nimitz CO and a Strike Group Commander. Only in the daytime and usually just refuelers. They didn't want any risk. Got 1,240 traps. Got my 1,000th trap as CO and Nimitz. Let's see what it says here. March 16th of 2008 on my big 1,000th trap thing right in front of me. I pulled the ejection handle in an F-14A as an instructor pilot in August of 1987 in a RAG airplane down off the coast of San Clemente, California. So put an airplane in the water. So yes, I do have one of those.
Oh, you got to swim in the cold water too, then?
I did. So 2, which means you did too.
No. One of our previous shows, gent was coming off of San Clemente and pulled it at night, and he said, it sucked because it was black night. He couldn't see shit. It was about 6 to 8 foot seas, and it just kept dumping him into the water. He said he'd be sitting there fat, dumb, and happy, and the next thing he knows, he's underwater and getting dunked and tumbled, and it was about an hour.
Yeah.
And while he was there, a 47 came over, hovered over him, and left. He's like, what, did he not see me? What the hell? Said he spent an hour and 15 in the water before they came back and got him. But the helo needed gas, and so they left without him, and another helo came and picked him up.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah.
This one was bright at noon on a gorgeous blue day. Just beautiful outside, and it was nice out. So, yeah.
Was that engine failure, hydraulic failure? What led up to your ejection?
This story is actually out there in a couple of places, and it's pretty funny. The first one that I've seen that's pretty damn funny is Mark Vizcara did a thing called Tomcat Tales, and it's a bunch of storytelling on,
We had another guest that was a part of Tomcat Tales.
Okay. So Slammer Richardson was in my back seat, and he was a student pilot. Was that the guy you had?
No,
Pester.
Pester.
Oh yeah. Yep. So, anyways, a whole bunch of storytelling. And what they did was at Hook a couple of years ago, at Kill a couple of years ago, they interviewed me about the story I'm about to tell you, and they interviewed Slammer, who was in the back seat, about the same story. And then they play off each other, and it's hilarious. Besides the Tomcat Tales section that I did, I haven't really talked to anybody else on the podcast about the thing. So the three of us are in a good space. So I was an instructor in VF 124 in August of 1987. I got there in May, right after my first sea tour. I was an instructor pilot and an instructor landing signal officer. And I took Slammer, who was a student pilot on his way to the tactics phase, out on a hop we called the flip-flop hop. And what you would do is you put a student pilot in the back seat, and the instructor pilot would demonstrate kind of how the airplane flies tactically. You remember in the Harrier, there were your corner airspeed, your best turn, your best instantaneous turn rate, biffing, how you do all that stuff, what the airplane feels like. And so we demonstrate that, talk through that. And then we also demonstrated different ways to do loops. So of course, standard 4G loop. And then in the Tomcat, one of the strengths is getting vertical. So kind of doing that egg where you come back down and extend in the vertical, showing that. And then because the airplane had this kind of nasty, departure sort of phase out of the vertical, you showed 3 vertical recoveries. The first one was on your stomach, 20 degrees, so 70 degrees nose high, go to 0 airspeed, the airplane falls away. Second one was 110 degrees, so you're on your back 20 degrees, go to 0 airspeed, fall away. And then the one that got everybody's attention was straight up. So 90 degrees straight up, go to 0 airspeed. The airplane does all kinds of weird octaflugerons and stuff. And the idea, and it can look to you like you're in a spin. And so like all of our flight training, in the Tomcat in this phase, you taught the students, keep your hands off everything. And I used to tell people when I was in the back seat, show me your hands, feet on the deck, let the airplane flop around. It's going to flop around. And finally, when it comes out of it and it's going nose down, now recover the airplane. This vertical recovery, if you got it parked pretty nose high, would water your eyes and ring your bell a little bit when banging around, because that, we talked about flying tennis courts, a huge moment arm. So you were on the end of that moment arm and whipping around, right? So I had been taught, and I did in my first squadron, use the idea where you could go up in the Tomcat and right about 100 knots, you go up, and the idea was, on the vertical recoveries, the pilot's gone up, he's not looking inside, he's looking at the bogey, and he realizes now he's stuck. And so what do you do when the airplane falls off? Get the nose out of the vertical, but then let it go and let it do its thing. So that was the idea. So now you're stuck, what do you do? But I learned in my RAG class as a student that you could go up and about 100 knots, shove the stick forward, and the airplane would translate kind of on its belly and do this real nice kind of vertical pirouette, and then you come down on a guy. So I used that. And so I was briefing Slammer in the brief. By the way, there is a tactical use of this vertical straight up thing where you get there on purpose without enough airspeed to go up, and right past 100 knots, shove the stick forward, and the airplane will go like this. And so we do the brief, we go out, and the reason it's called a flip-flop hop is you go out, instructors in the front, do all the demos, student in the back, come back to Miramar, land, hot pump, switch seats, hot pump meaning put a new bag of gas in the airplane. Mm-hmm. Swap seats, and now instructors sitting in the back, students in the front. The 2 first FAM hops, when the student pilot's flying and you're in the back as an instructor pilot, and this hop, scariest, because you have no controls. And all you can do is narrate to the student. And so it's always kind of a stressful hop. But usually in the front.
Quick question, Nasty. So you just taught me something new. In the Tomcat, in the RAG, there wasn't a trainer with had controls in the back seat?
Nope.
Oh,
no
shit.
such thing as a Tomcat trainer. Yeah.
Oh, shit. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, this is kind of serious now. Yeah. Sorry. Please continue.
It's kind of like any airplane, that's only single seat. Think F-35 right now. There are no 2-seat F-35s. Yeah. And so it's the same sort of idea back then. But still, instructor pilot gets in the back. Of course, you learn how to work the back seat, which is always a trick. And now you're sitting in the back, and this guy in the front who can easily kill you in a heartbeat.
Right.
But anyway,
No, you
we go
got my
out.
attention.
But typically the first part of the flip-hop hop, the instructor's in there and you know how to fly the airplane. So anyway, Slammer and I go out and we do all the maneuvers and stuff, and we do the vertical maneuvers. We do the straight up maneuver. You know, we get up there like this, and I'm trying like crazy to push the airplane over, and it won't go. You know, I'm shoving on the stick, and I'm keeping it parked straight up, and it won't go, and it keeps translating, pretty much straight up. And the first time falls out of the vertical, and it's like, man, whips around. We're getting bashed around the airplane. It kind of wobbles around, and we recover the airplane and start flying back. And so we completed all of it. And so we're about 70 miles to the southwest of San Clemente Island, 100 and some miles from San Diego. Got 6,600 pounds of gas, so enough to maneuver and stuff. And we're heading back to Miramar. And fateful words, I say to Slammer, hey, we're complete here, heading back, flip-flop. Is there anything else you'd like to see before you're flying it for real? And he goes, yeah, I want to see you do that vertical pushover thing you briefed me on, the tactical part. Okay, lock the harness up, we go, so start at 15,000 feet, and you just pull the airplane straight up into the pure vertical and park it there and just keep it just straight up.
Yep.
And I'm dancing on the rudders and at full military power, not an afterburner, dancing on the rudders and keeping this thing straight up, and the airplane starts to backslide. And when the Tomcat backslides, you get a bunch of blue smoke in the cockpit from the oil it's burning and stuff. And then we had a little 69-cent piece of string that was screwed to the nose. You could tell when the airplane was flying straight. We had a yaw trim, and we had a ball, of course, but you always looked at the yaw string to see if you were flying straight or not. And so when you started going backwards, of course, in the clear blue sky, you can't see anything, but you can see when the yaw string flips around. So I used to kind of, perk my head up, look over the dash, see the yaw string flip around, and tell Slammer, we're up hot mic, and then go Slammer, hey, the yaw string flipped around. Right about the airplane slides back on, and I had it parked completely straight up. I mean, the airplane isn't coming out of the vertical at all. It's rotating a little bit due to the torque on the engines. We're sliding backwards. I'm trying to push on the airplane. I haven't let go of the controls all the way to zero speed, sliding backwards. I'm pushing on the stick. Dancing on rudders, keep it straight up. And the left engine stalls. This huge bang, yellow fireball goes by my left ear.
Yeah, fire shot out the intake.
Yeah, shot out the intake. Whoa! Scared the shit out of both of us. And so what you do for an engine stall, and the airplane starts coming off to that direction because we're full power on the left side. Mm-hmm. And so it goes off, left stall light, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, lights going off, flashing. And so your boldface for engine stalls, you pull both throttles to idle. It doesn't say pending flight regime, just pull them to idle. So we're still coming off at pretty much no air speed over the intake. And I pulled both throttles to idle, and the right engine stalled. Bang! Fire out the right side. Now, and now the airplane's doing what it always does, coming out of the vertical with that extra added attraction of the asymmetric thrust, starting it on its back, flipping around, doing the circus ride. And so now we're getting the crap beat out of us. And because Slammer was in the back seat, he was thinking back seat last spin procedures. Because I'm in the front seat trying to figure out what's going on and very, very much focused on restarting at least one of the engines before we have to eject. I don't have that nice neutral backboard of show me your hands, put your feet on the, on the deck, show me your hands, what's your airspeed, what's your turn needle, you go through what's your angle of attack to determine whether the airplane is actually spinning, okay. Right? And so what ends up happening is we start running around, all this, and airplanes oscillating back and forth, and I'm not patient enough. And so I go, no, this airplane's spinning. I'm going to force it out of the, the vertical. And it was just whipping like crazy. I've got to get the nose down so I can get 300 knots on the airplane so I can air start one of the engines. Because if I don't, we're going to have to eject. So I put controls in too early. And what I did was I kept the airplane in a spin, basically didn't allow it to recover, even though all I had to do was really let everything go. And then I might have had enough altitude to get an engine started. But that we never got to that point. We passed 10,000 feet out of control, which is mandatory eject altitude. And Slammer goes 10,000 feet. And I'm like, I didn't say a word. Like, okay, somebody's going to recover this airplane and we're going to go home. We got to 8,000 feet. It's like, holy shit. Okay, I don't have it. And right about then.
So you're going through denial, acceptance.
Yes. Yes. All the stages of grief right then. And, oh, man. And it's like, oh, my God, at 8,000 feet. I said, nope, I don't have it. Eject, eject, eject. So I reached up, pulled the handle. And as I'm pulling the handle, those big old, loops that we had, I watched the canopy come off. And it was really funny. You guys know in tactical airplane, the canopy is like right in front of you. It's like a car window. You put your hand on the sill, right, and hold on to the canopy. Right. But it looks like it's 8 feet in front of me. Wow. It looks like it's 8 feet in front of me, and it comes off with this boom, bunch of brown smoke as the SMDC lines went off. Slow motion. I'm not kidding. Slow motion. And then I pulled the handles down to my chest, center of my chest. Nothing happened because time expansion. Nothing. I'm just sitting there like, oh, is this seat going to work? And then I went out and, hurt the shit out of my back. It really, really hurt. I thought, well, that's where I broke my back, because I remember and thinking this entire time, well, you don't feel pain with the adrenaline of something like this. And so I must have really hurt my back. And this is in the quarter second that it takes to go out of the airplane. Yeah. And there's like this bam, bam, bam. I see the airplane side number as the nose spins away as I'm flipping over. I see my feet with the leg restraints on them, and then a big flash of orange when the parachute opens, and then blam, I'm in the chute. Wow. And I had the face curtain in my hand, and I let it go. And I'm like, oh no, because you can keep the face curtain, right, as a souvenir.
Right. Sure. Yes.
Anyway, I look over his slammer, and he looks like he's dead. It's like the previous story. He's hanging down, his head's down, his arms are down. He's looking like Goose in the first Top Gun, going down. I'm like, oh my God, I killed him. And then I start going through my survival procedures and stuff. And I look back over at him, and he's back up, and he looks like he's flying his parachute, and he's looking like a model, right out of the movies, on how to do a parachute ride. Yeah. But it's just kind of funny. So I'm trying to get all my stuff out. I'm trying to see whether my raft will come out. And I go, okay, I got to inflate my LPA first. So I inflate that thing, and it just pushes my head right. I mean, in the pool, when you do water survival, those things barely work. And for real, they're like rocks. I mean, bam! And now I'm looking up. I can't do anything but check my chute. So I got my chin stuck up there. I have to take my oxygen mask off. Helmet rotates off the back. Finally pull my chin down. So I'm kind of bareheaded coming down. I try to pull my raft out, and the little handle on the seat pan, I pull the handle, and it feels like it comes off in my hand. It's like, okay, that's not working. That's kind of weird. So I'm walking around trying to see if my raft is out. And I get this idea that if I can get Sam to tell me my raft is out, I'm going to be okay. So I start yelling at him. I'm like, Sam! Because I want, is my raft out? Kind of, Sam! And he's got his helmet on. We're a couple hundred yards away, and I'm screaming. Finally, he sees me, and he sees me yelling. And so you get this 4-line release in the parachute where you pull these little toggles, and the lines come off the back of the parachute, and it dumps a little air out the back, and it keeps you from oscillating. Well, it also gives you about 4 knots of forward speed. So both of us pulled our 4-line release, point towards each other, and now we're driving towards each other at about 8 miles an hour, and it's obvious we're going to hit. I'm like, holy shit! And we go by each other. The canopies must have touched, because we're this big long, whoa! And so we stay pretty far apart, and end up going down and getting in the water and getting in the raft. And so I get in my raft, drop my Coke fittings right as my boots hit the water. The water was pretty nice. It was nice and blue outside. It's a gorgeous day. And there's an E2 went over us, and he had watched us eject. And he comes out, hey, look at that, an air show. Oh, they ejected. So he becomes on-team commander. We actually jumped out in the middle of an exercise. 8 Navy ships, 6 helicopters. And so we had helicopters over us in a heartbeat. When the E2 went over us, a report goes back to the beach that one guy was in good condition. That was me, because I had done the little maneuver to get up in my one-man raft, sitting straight up. And Slammer was laying on his stomach. And so they said, well, the second guy's in fair condition. Well, what Slammer was doing, he's a surfer. He was paddling over to me like on a surfboard in his little raft. He's going, shit, that was awesome. No. Holy shit. He's like yelling, grinning, here we are. And we tied up kind of like the Addams Family old series, kind of opposite each other. And we're on these 4-foot crests. We come up with this crest, and I see this. And of course, I'm totally terrified of sharks. we come over the crest, I see this gigantic animal on the next wave over, and there's a nose, a fin, a long back, and a huge fin, and then, and then water. We go back down in the trough, and I'm trying to tell Slammer, there's something over there. We come back up. It's the airplane.
Oh.
The Tomcat.
Oh.
The Tomcat had landed flat, and it was, and the reserve buoyancy had put it back up on the surface. There was the fin in the front was the windscreen with no canopy. The fin in the back was the tails, and it was just sitting on top of the water with this big BF-124 paint scheme on it that subsequently sank.
Oh wow!
These 2 helicopters came pick us up. One grabbed Sam, one grabbed me, and then we went back to Miramar, and sitting in the skipper's office, dripping wet, trying to tell him what I had done. And he goes, "God damn it, Nasty." He goes, "That tactical maneuver, that was good in block 90s when you were in 51, and he's block 135. That doesn't work." I'm like, "Well, that would have been good to know." And it was about 5 weeks. I went through 3 boards. They all passed, although the safety board, where they basically said pilot error, kind of, sucks the ego out of you for a while. Yeah. About 5 weeks before I got back in the airplane, and we went out east over land. And in the Kane Moa, I did with this poor guy in the back seat. I said, "Okay, we're going to go do one of these vertical recoveries. It's almost the most terrifying time of my life. Over the ejection and going up there and trusting the fact that it ain't going to do the same thing to me again." Doing just fine. Recovered the airplane, flew back home. Said, "That's enough." Flew back home and landed. Anyway, that's the ejection story.
That is a great story, my friend. Thank you.
It really is. That really is. Holy smokes! Oh, I know what I was going to ask you.
You guys probably generated a couple of podcasts today.
Yeah, no, this is great content. This is why we started this show, because we fly with all these professionals, and we know people who know other professionals, as Curly put us onto you, and Yogi and Master obviously as well. And there are so many great stories out there, and people love hearing them. And so, as Fig put it, you're at a dinner party, and the next thing you know, you've got an audience around you. Everyone wants to talk aviation. It's like this is great stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how we started this, and we're having a ball with it. Actually, one of the questions I had, backing up a little bit, was, so when you're CO of the Nimitz, did you find the LSOs graded you easier or harder, or was it ruthless?
It was ruthless, man. It was ruthless. And I would go back on the platform all the time as the captain, and stand back there doing that. I had a blast with them. I also, when I was XO of the Carl Benz, I didn't fly when I was XO, but I'd go back there a lot. But no, we had this great relationship, between me on the bridge and them on the platform. I call them all the time and go, "Hey, this is what I'm seeing. What do you think? And this is the kind of course I'm thinking. I'm trying to take away some of the roll or some of the pitch. Which do you want?" So it's really great. And when I go flying, it was even. It was like, they weren't ruthless, like we're gonna screw the CO and it wasn't Santa Claus either. They read me the riot act. I've got a real funny LSO story for you about learning how to brake the F-18. So I got pretty good at doing the brake at the aft end of the ship in a Tomcat, and I could come in at 600 knots and about 400 feet and just yank the crap out of the airplane right just before the stern, and come around the corner and do okay with it. So I started to fly the F-18, and I go, "Okay, I'm going to try this one day." We were out at the ship. I came in, exact same, kind of process in the Tomcat, yanked the crap out of the F-18, and I look down and I'm right over the LSO platform, because the F-18, Tomcat with its wings back would decelerate, but in the turn would be like a mile. And so you'd be at just the corrected beam distance. Well, in the Super Hornet, that thing's got a living wing. And I did this pirouette, even at 400 knots, and I end up right over the top of the LSO platform, very sheepishly and with a lot of embarrassment, turn away, do this really horrible approach, land. They come in, they're grinning. They're like, "What the fuck, Captain?" And I go, "Hey, I didn't, and they gave me a no grade for my pattern." It's like, it's a no grade, right? I go, "Yeah, give me my no grade. That was awful. I'm so embarrassed." And then this one guy, he says, the fighter ready room I was in, the team had one of the fighter LSOs. He's the young lieutenant. And he goes, "Hey, Captain, grab a cup of coffee. I'm going to teach you how to break the F-18. And it turns out it's a double break. You come in and you break the airplane. You still at 600 knots, even stroke the burner later on, yank the crap out of the airplane, 90 degrees, and then let go, count 1 potato, 2 potato, ballistic, and then yank another 90 degrees hard. And you squat the airplane out at the 180. And it looks really cool because the airplane just squats. It doesn't even turn. It just squats right out there. And then you come around a corner and you land from there, and that's how you break the F-18. So I learned how to break the F-18 from the LSOs.
That's awesome.
But anyway, yeah, I didn't. There's two. It's a great question because there's 2 times that I didn't impart my, hey, I was whatever. There I was. One when I was LSOs and the Nimitz. It was a good partnership. The second was because I was a nuke ship CO when I was the strike group commander of the Ike. I let the CO of the ship, Marcus, make his own decisions. He would come to me and say, "I'd like to do this with the plant." I'd say, "Okay, your decision." And I said, "If you're coming to ask my permission or stuff, I'm not giving you any because it's your nuke plant. I'm not gonna get in the way." But I always felt that I didn't want to come down on somebody because I had been there before, and I didn't want to lead that way. So the same thing with the LSOs. I just had a blast, playing with them, and they knew my experience, and they knew the A6 story, and they knew I spent a lot of time out there, and I'd grown up as an LSO, so it was neat. It was kind of neat to have that partnership.
Right. That's awesome.
Well, that's kind of the neat thing about growing into those leadership positions anyway is that you learn how to trust. You mentioned all those professional captains working for you, and you learn how to trust the people who have experience, and they're there for a reason. It isn't their first day on the job, so that's kind of cool to see when a leader does that, because there are the leaders out there who micromanage, and that drives you nuts.
Nobody likes a micromanager, man.
Oh,
Nobody.
It drives you nuts. But then the guy who learns to trust his leaders underneath him, and it's clear that you did that. Your experiences brought you into that. So no, that was really cool.
It's a hallmark of my leadership style. I did that on purpose a lot, and was very vocal about extending trust and delegating, so that I could, get the best out of my team. That's the way that I led. Because I knew what it felt like to be micromanaged, and I knew what it felt like to be trusted and to be able to, learn. And so I would always say, and I'm doing some work in this area, by the way. And I would always say to them, look, there's only 2 things that a leader should do: is give guidance and remove barriers. And I'm going to give you guidance a whole bunch, and I'll get barriers out of your way when you can't execute my guidance. But I'm delegating the task to you, and I trust you to get it done. And I just want to help you. So you just tell me when you need my help. But other than that, go do your job, because I'll tell you, as we've seen, the inevitable result from a micromanaging leader is a very poor result, because that micromanaging leader is not getting the value of the perspectives from his team. I know you guys see that in cockpits around the world. You see that in cockpit gradients. You see that in organizations. You see that and hear that from people you talk to. It's universal.
Well, you're spot on that, Nasty. Spot on, you. Yes, sir. I could listen to stories from Nasty all day.
Oh, as could I.
We're gonna run you out of time.
We've gone past the time you've allotted for us, so thank you for that. But let me ask one other quick thing. You touched about going to Nuke-School, and you said, was that about 18 months? You said.
Yeah, I started in December of '99 at Stupid Study. Okay. Anybody who either had bad grades or was an old man would go an extra month at Nuclear Power School in Charleston, South Carolina. And then finished up in May of 2001.
Okay.
There's essentially 3 phases for us commanders going to carriers. There's 6 months of academics, and then there's 4 months of academics and standing watch on a plant. In my case, I went to New York to do that. And then the last phase is 15 weeks at Naval Reactors headquarters, where you learn leadership and more nuke stuff, and more tests, and examinations by the 4-star and his staff on being able to run a nuclear power plant. So you do all of that no matter what role you play, brand new recruit all the way to the commanding officer of an aircraft carrier or an attack or ballistic submarine.
Yeah, so they really want you to understand the workings of the nuke plant. I guess that comes down from the days of Admiral Rickover, then, I assume.
Yes, it does.
He's the one the father of the nuclear navy.
Great connection, Pete. When they started this, it's his standards that have been retained in the program. But when they started this, they were thinking about it like, okay, you're underwater in a submarine somewhere, stuck on the bottom maybe, and you have to figure out a way to fix the nuclear power plant, whatever's wrong. And so they teach you everything with the idea that, you're going to be down there going, okay, change that bolt and put this bolt in, or something like that. So that kind of stayed all the way through the program. And so they train you. The neat thing is, if you and I talk about naval aviation safety, and I talk about a safety record, I'm gonna knock on wood right next to me, right? The nuclear power safety record, I can talk about that all day long and not have any kind of suspicion, because the way we train, the way we maintain, the way we build those systems, we are guaranteed not to have, an incident, a serious incident. Now, little things happen all the time, but we care about the littlest, tiniest things, and we mitigate those and other risks that happen such that it is extraordinarily safe. But in order to do that, people like me, post-command commanders at 42 years old, are going to sit in class for a year and a half to make sure we get it right.
That's awesome. It's awesome. Fascinating, but awesome that they do that. So, Fig, do you have any other questions that you can?
Listen, I could go on and on.
As could I.
Questions.
I'm going to ask if you'd be willing to join us at some point again in the future. We're having a ball.
Absolutely. I think I've told you my whole career, so I would.
We're chipping away here, because I know every time we ask something, I know something else falls out, and you're like, oh, I could talk about that, but I don't want to now because these guys are taking up my time. So, stories, stuff like you kind of mentioned, well, I never had my helmet off unless I was over, so it might have been over Iraq and on a combat mission. Well, these are stories that nobody knows, and nobody's going to hear if we can't, like, every time you tell a story, it triggers a memory. I'm like, oh gosh, I kind of forgot about that. So, the more, of course, a single malt Scotch always helps. It's just the wrong time of the day for me to do that. Can you think of a kind of a outlandish, funny story that you could relate that happened while you were flying? If not, it's okay. We'll come back.
Yeah, we'll probably have to come back.
Okay.
I mean, there's things the shenanigans
yes.
that we did, especially in the 80s. Miramar was epic in the 80s. The movie came out and became more epic, but flying during the 80s was just, nuts. The 8-hour or whatever, 12-hour bottle or throttle rule did not exist. And so while it was advisory that you not drink alcohol,
within 50 feet, wasn't it?
Before that, we used to, don't drink alcohol within 50 feet and don't smoke within 12 hours.
Right.
I mean, the number of times that you probably should not flown because you didn't have your last drink until sometime very close to flying, was the one I'll keep that thread going. Very early in my JO tour, me and this guy went out on a cross country to build some hours. We landed at Tulsa, Oklahoma, which used to be favorably called the Tulsa Turnaround. It was great. There's a couple of bars right there. The staff that was there was pretty fun to be around, and they were usually at the bars. And when I say the staff, you know what I mean? But
yes.
Anyway, we did not go to bed, and we did not stop drinking until about an hour before man up. And so we flew back to Miramar in a Tomcat from Tulsa back into the break because the guy in my back seat had duty that day and he couldn't get out of duty. And so we only had an overnight, and we flew back, and he is hurting. And he's the one that kept me awake or kept me up all night. I'm like, look, I can't go. He goes, oh, come on, Nasty, let's go. And so, but he's hurting. He is really hurting. And I had sleep, but I had stopped drinking at some point, prior to that, but we're flying back. And so I'm good enough, but we're going back to Miramar from Oklahoma straight into the sun, but you can't be because in the morning sun's behind us. But anyway, we're going there. It's too bright outside to see. I got the visor down, and he is hurting in the back seat. He gives me the radios all the way back when he's kind of, struggling back there, he goes, hey, just take the radios on the way back. Usually the back seat gets the radios. And I'm mad at him because he's got me in this thing, and we're going back early because he's got duty. He can't get out of duty and stuff. So I take him into the break at Miramar, and I broke the shit out of that airplane with him in the back seat, hurting like crazy. And he is yelling at me through a 6.5 G break at 400, 500 knots at Miramar, and he's going, "You son of a bitch!" And I'm dragging him through the break. So all that we probably shouldn't have done.
Bounce his head off the canopy.
Yeah, that's right. Knocking his head off the canopy. Yeah, look right, blank, go left. But I'm sure there's a lot of those things there. What's really funny is, and I did intimate to you guys, I'm doing some work in leadership, and I've been able to talk to some groups about leadership and what I believe about leadership and stuff. And I'll tell you what's amazing to me. The company I work in now gives me the opportunity to talk to various leaders at various levels about leadership. No matter the audience, no matter the question, I have a story. And so I'm putting together all of these stories and attaching leadership lessons to them and what I learned when I did a story. And it's just amazing, to your point about having stories. There's so much awesome experience that came from 36 years of being in the Navy and driving ships and flying airplanes and all that kind of stuff that lends itself to learning and teaching and leadership and mentorship, and that stuff about delegation and micromanagement and trust. I mean, that came from 36 years, and the last 16 years were really when those big leadership jobs happen, where I could test all this stuff out. And it's the same here as it is in a big company, as a small business, the cockpit of a commercial airplane. All of that stuff applies. So I've had a really good time at thinking about, leadership and storytelling and things that, people might want to listen to. Over.
Well, thank you for your service, Nasty. And thank you for all the great stories today.
Yeah, indeed. It's, you're talking to, well, I guess, Fig, you retired as an LC, right? Out of reserves?
Yeah, I had 32 years total, retired as a lieutenant colonel out of the Air Guard, Nasty. I started in the Marine Corps, and I finished in the Air Guard as actually a squadron commander of a C-130.
Yeah. Congrats. Thanks for your service.
It is just, it's so familiar, and it feels so good, and you're just a genuine, down-to-earth, great guy, I can tell. And the billets that you've held, and I know a lot of people's careers are better off because you were in positions of leadership. I know Nasty and Yogi and Master are alive, in no small part due to your leadership and competence. It's amazing. So Admiral, thank you for your service, and thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute blast.
You guys, I tell you, this has been a treat. You all know, the three of us, storytelling is great to re-immerse ourselves in this stuff. I've been so lucky to have these opportunities. Talking to you guys is fun. Telling stories is fun. Tailhook's in a week, so going back to Tailhook and, get immersed in that again. So, yeah, I loved it. And I'm so humbled and honored to have been able to serve and then be lucky enough to be given all these great opportunities. And it's been a great life, and to be able to share some of that with people and to be able to make a difference in people's lives has just been really, I have a lot of gratitude for that. And so talking to you guys today was awesome. Anytime, if you got anything else that you think I might add to the content, I'd love to come back with you guys.
Oh, we'd love to have you back. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, I'll close it out here then and say that, first of all, thank you to Dave Hamilton over at the Mac Geek Gab, who gave us the technical expertise and the support to help put this together. The Mac Geek Gab is the best tech podcast going out there, so thank you, Dave, for all your help and support. If you have any questions or comments or want to reach out to us, and we can get questions to Nasty through us, you can write to Fig at sothereiwas.us or me at repeat sothereiwas.us. You can follow us on Facebook at sothereiwas.us/Facebook. or Twitter, sothereiwas.us/Twitter. Again, it's been a thrill to have you with us today. Take care, and check 6.
You're at a quarter mile and someone asks you who your mother is. You don't know. That's how focused you are. Okay, call the ball. Now it's a knife fight in a phone booth. And remember, full power in the wire. Your IQ rolls back to that of an ape.